Hello guys, SirGrindalot here. Today we talk a bit about 9, the most bipolar character in the roster of Chaos Zero Nightmare. And a bit later on I will explain to you why I consider her a bipolar character. Before getting to that, I want to get rid of the obvious stuff first, which is, what's her favorite partner? Well, favorite partner is her signature partner. Alternatively, you can use Wilhelmina or Burger Girl. I prefer Burger Girl for Chaos runs. I prefer Wilhelmina if I'm clearing something that has a damage threshold, a turn requirement, and stuff like that. What are her best fragment sets? Well, her best fragment set is her signature fragment set. If you want an alternative, because maybe you didn't get anything decent yet, you can use the old order set, which is this one, the bullet set, or the set that gives 20% critical chance to expensive cards, but this is a really co-op option. It's better than nothing, but you want to give her one of the two new order sets. Now, we got rid of the easy stuff. That is obvious, and it's the same pretty much for every combatant / character in every gacha game ever. Let's move on to the cards. And a thing that has to be mentioned first, because every day I keep seeing people making this mistake on Reddit, on Discord, in my imagination, are people picking Divine Epiphanies for Hue. Hue is a card with an effect that when it gets exhausted or used, it increases level. It goes up, level 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on which epiphany you get. When it gets replaced, when it levels up, the Divine Epiphany does not carry over, so it's wasted points on your save file. The only really fringe situation where I can consider a Divine Epiphany on Hue not being completely wasted is if you get Divine Epiphany, Ego points, and something else, so that the first time that you play Hue, you get Ego points that might allow you to activate an ego skill earlier. But it's an extremely fringe case scenario, and 99% of the time will just be 20 wasted points on your save file. So, never pick a Divine Epiphany on Hue. Which epiphanies are better? This is something that, it depends. It really depends, and there is not a right or wrong answer. There is one, which is Massacre, which is this one, which is essentially the AoE Epiphany, which makes 9 like a better Yuki. Because with this Epiphany, 9's AoE damage becomes kinda similar to Yuki, not on the same level, but kinda similar, but at the same time her single target damage is much better than Yuki's, significantly better. And if you're doing essentially specifically a Chaos run, where apart from the bosses there are a multitude of occasionally difficult fights with multiple enemies, Massacre is an excellent pick. They're all good though. And Extreme has multiple levels, and when you get to the top, to level 5, the multiplier is 1200, which is crazy. It's an absolutely bonkers multiplier. And it's the reason why we occasionally see some absolutely degenerate stuff on Reddit. We will talk about it later when we get to the bipolar stuff. All of these are good, they just accomplish different things, and it's not difficult now to reroll epiphanies during the run or at the end of a run. So if you really want to have a save file with the Giga Extreme Hue, go for it. If you want a save file with Massacre, go for it. Really, no right or wrong pick for Hue, just avoid the Divine Epiphanies. Experience Strike is a card that is not bad, but the only version that I like is this one, which is increase the damage amount of exhaust cards in hand by 30% for one turn. Because it's the only one that helps 9 or other characters with exhaust cards in your team, like Serenial, to deal more damage. Everything else for me is and I occasionally consider removing this card altogether if I have the chance, and I did not get this one. Then, a similar problem for Fatal Strike. Fatal Strike is a card that deals more damage. You can do some disgusting shenanigans with it, but more often than not is a card that I instantly remove from the deck after removing the basic cards. And then we get Counterblade, which is okay, and there are a few options that I like a lot. I personally really like Counterblade in the version that costs 1, oh no, and it automatically activates Hue at the beginning of the turn, each turn for free. I like that one a lot, but let's keep this in mind later when we talk about the bipolar stuff. In general, all the options are fine, they just increase your damage because they allow you to build more Honed Hedge. Apart from one specific scenario where you absolutely do not want this upgrade that costs 1. And then we get her, let's say, signature card, which is Fighting Spirit. Now, the problem with the Hue is that it's a very expensive card. And having Fighting Spirit in the deck means that you can activate it for free, it gets exhausted, and you get the higher level. So a lot of general use save files will have free, maybe 4 Fighting Spirit, but I think that free is more than enough. A Hue of the Epiphany of your choice. Counterblade, Fatal Strike, you can remove it, you can keep it, it's up to you. Experience Strike, you can remove it, you can keep it, again, up to you. Definitely remove Shield. The 2 basic strikes, it kinda depends. It's not terrible as a basic card, because in addition to the damage, you also get a multiplier for exhaust card for 1 turn. But it's also not that good. So if you get the chance to remove a handful of cards, let's say 4 cards, and you get all your right Epiphany, and you get correct gear from the arena, a deck could be Hue, let's say 3 Fighting Spirits, Counterblade, Experience Strike, you remove the remaining 4 cards, and your leftover points are for Divine Epiphanies and gear from the arena, that should be focused exclusively on increasing her damage. What changes completely is if your account has Orlea, or if you're planning to get Orlea when you reach the 300 selector. The deal with Orlea is the following. Let me put an image on screen that is going to be much easier to understand. There are 2 kinds of buffs in Chaos Zero Nightmare: additive and multiplicative. The vast majority of buffs in the game are additive. What you see at the top is card damage 1200%, which is the max Hue extreme of 9. If you get a bunch of 30% buffs here and there from different sources, usually they're additive. So you take 1200 plus 30%, plus 30%, plus 40%, you reach 1290%, which is not very impressive. If you have a look at the bottom, multiplicative buffs, which is Orlea and the new spores that we can get from the Chaos, from the current Chaos exploration, Hue's damage goes from 1200 to 1782%. Reason being that first you multiply the card damage by, well, 10%, so it's multiply 1.1, and then there is another multiplicative effect in Softy, which is 35%, so you multiply by 135, and you reach this without considering the retain effect that keeps increasing the amount of damage of the next card by 35%, without considering all the other potential buffs in the game, without considering that spore propagation can stack. If you stack 5 spores on the enemy, it's going to be a multiplier of 50%, so we would go from 1200 to 1800, and then we multiply it by a further 1.35%. If you have attacks that deal very little damage, additive buffs, those that you see at the top, are actually pretty good. I took as an example Serenial. Let me go to Serenial just for a moment, my beloved Serenial. Cobalto Light. Multiplier was 151, is not that high, and it hits 4 times. If to this card you add a 30% additive multiplier, it goes to 181, multiply 4. That's a huge improvement in terms of percentage, really, really huge. But when you have a big bonk, like 9's big bonks in the form of hue, that 30% additive is not as impressive, because on her basic hue it would go from 420 to 450. And what I'm explaining to you is an oversimplified version that doesn't take into consideration a lot of potential different sources of buffs, but that is the mechanic overall, and it's the reason why if you go on Reddit, Twitter, social media in general, you can see a bunch of 9 showcases, and I'm doing the biggest air quotes I've ever done in my life here, with 9 hitting for like 500k damage on turn 5, 1 million damage on turn 10, or stuff like that. And it's just a matter of stacking buffs over and over and over, and then, abusing these omega multipliers that she gets on her big bonks. Other characters can do this as well, by the way. Haru has pretty high multipliers. Not this high. So, with Haru, you're never going to see the same numbers that you're going to see with 9. And in addition to that, Haru, you need to have Anchor Shot in hand. Whereas 9 has hue in hand all the time, so it's one less thing to worry about. So the true value of 9 depends a little bit on that, the Orlea factor, and also on whether you like 9 or not. If you do not have Orlea and you like 9, 9 is a fine character. You can build her, you can pull for her, you can build her, you can play her. She's going to perform extremely well, especially because this season has a ton of mechanics that synergize with her kit in general, and most of the enemies, if not all the enemies, are weak to order damage, so she stomps around quite well. If you have Orlea, you have arguably the best single-target nuker in the game. You just need to build both of them correctly. Now, the problem that is now in the game, and that, let's see what happens in the future, because it could be a problem, but it could also be solved via patches and rebalancing, is, well, first of all, personally, I have a Manifestigo for Luke, Manifestigo for Hugo, no Magna, no Orlea, so, okay, that's my problem. But the real problem is, if you've been around the gacha game world ecosphere for a while, and especially you're familiar to some extent with Genshin Impact, there was a period, which was a very long period, during which each single showcase had Kazuha, Bennett, Shanling, and a random 4th character. Each endgame clear was Kazuha, Bennett, Shanling, and a random 4th character. It could have been a 4-star, a 5-star, it could have been my grandma on a wheelchair. Anyone was clearing the endgame with that team. So it was never a showcase of my grandma on a wheelchair. It was always a showcase of how good those, 2 supports and 1 off-the-field damage dealer was. So what is happening now in Chaos Zero Nightmare is 99% of the showcases for 9, pun no intended, are Orlea, either Rin. Where is Rin? Why did I say Rin? Either Ray or Beryl or Narya, that kind of extra support that provides damage or card draw, and then 9, in the case of 9, but you can do it with any damage dealer. Like, it can be Orlea, Ray, Haru. It can be Orlea, Ray. I was about to say Kizuru, but Kizuru benefits from other things. But, really any character can benefit from that kind of support. So, it's not that 9 is unplayable without Orlea. Far from it. I do not have Orlea, and I cleared everything with 9. But the difference in performance is huge between having and not having Orlea. So a lot of it is going to depend on your expectations, let's say. Because if you want to get 9 and play here because you are hyped about seeing 200k damage, but you do not have Orlea, you're going to be disappointed. If you don't care about that, you just like 9, you like her animations, her Eriko skill is amazing, and you want to build her and play her, and you don't care about that kind of stuff, she's a valid, solid character. Just, she doesn't break the game. She's for me, is a slightly better Yuki. Maybe not better than my Yuki, because my Yuki, you know, has some investment to her. But for the average Yuki haver and 9 haver, 9 is going to be a slight grade, a side grade slash she's going to be a side grade slash slight upgrade over Yuki. With that said, she's a good character with great animations, so she get a thumbs up from yours truly. The fact that I have not seen Orlea and Magna in the game to this date, after getting a total of, what is it, 10 copies by now of Luke and Hugo, is what is eventually going to radicalize me. Bye guys, take care.